Hey everybody. Now I'm going to share with you all what electric capacitors look like after you burn them in a fireplace. If you watch my channel, you'll probably find several videos of me burning electrolytic capacitors in the fireplace just for fun. In one video, the fire was hot enough to cause these capacitors to explode immediately, well after a few seconds. But on the video I made last night, the fire wasn't quite hot enough to get the capacitors to explode in a firework-like manner. And I didn't have the draft fan on in the wood stove, so that's probably another reason why the coals weren't quite hot enough to make these capacitors pop like I was wanting. But I figured I'd share with you all what these things look like after they spend the night in the fireplace. In the wood stove, I should say. Here's a capzon that just sat down in the bottom of the stove on it. When I tossed the capacitors into the fireplace with the shovel, some of them have missed the actual fire and landed in the bottom of the stove, and they just sat there and of course they were subjected to extreme heat, so they just bulged and leaked. As you can see here, the white stuff here is actually the glue that was from the inside of the power supply. This capacitor was pulled out of a Bestech HX25012Z power supply that I recapped, and you can see the black stuff is the electrolyte that come out, and there is the bung. It's still, I mean, it looks just like it's just capacitor with some ashes on it, more or less. Of course it's foobar, seeing the top is bulged. Now let's show you some ones that actually came out from here. Here's a capacitor right here. I'm assuming it was probably either a capzon or a JPCE-2UR. And of course here's some ashes on the side of the capacitor. But more or less, when these capacitors end up in the fire, for example last night's fire, the first thing that goes on these caps is the plastic stuff. That burns off almost instantly, and in last night's scenario, the fire wasn't quite hot enough to cause these capacitors to explode. So the bungs burnt out to the bottom, and electrolyte went out that way, and the electrolyte and stuff was on fire. And basically these capacitors, if you can see inside here, the capacitor itself has this kind of like a paper formula. It's this paper wrapped around in a very tight coil, and you have electrolyte. Now, I'm not sure if this is actual paper or not, because of course the stuff is still in there. This right here is a TPO. As you can see, might be able to see on the vent, how the vent looks. And here's the bottom of the capacitor, looking inside of it. And this one here got toasted pretty good. I put quite a few capacitors in this thing last night. See what we have here. Here's another one of the capacitors that didn't quite make it into the fire, but you can kind of see how the sleeve around the capacitor got charred, but it didn't burn completely off. The bung is busted out on the bottom of it, and the top is bulged, and it's leaked a little bit. So this capacitor didn't quite, like I said, it didn't quite make it into the fire, but it got heat damaged right away. Anyways, that's how the capacitors look after you burn them in a fire. Do not repeat this experiment unless you know exactly what you're doing, and I'm not responsible for anything that happens. So anyways, any questions or comments, feel free to ask.